In this demo, we're going to see how you can develop real-time pipelines in SageMaker. Essentially go to training, develop models, and build the real-time pipelines. Test them in SageMaker, and then deploy them everywhere you want, whether it's on premises, in the cloud, on a Kubernetes cluster, on the edge, and so on. So this is a notebook you see running in SageMaker. I'm just going to open this notebook. I need to deploy several packages. I won't do it now. And then one of the things that we do here is to set up the MLrun. MLrun is the real-time pipeline orchestration framework by Iguazio. It's open source. So we're pointing it to another cluster where we're actually going to do the deployment. So what we're doing here is just developing several Python classes that will then be converted to real-time pipeline using some of the MLrun and underlying Nucleo technologies. So this is, for example, a model classifier, sort of predictor. So this is a class that loads the model and then does the prediction. We have some other custom classes. You can essentially build any custom class, any function, and incorporate them in your pipeline. Once I've done that, I need to essentially create a new function that takes our code, and out of our code we'll build this flow topology, this graph or a DAG, real-time graph. We have a bunch of models that we trained previously on SageMaker, and they're stored here in my bucket. And now what we're going to do is essentially design a graph. The graph looks like this. Essentially, we're going to get a request, and then we'll do some enrichment and pre-processing. And then we're going into an ensemble that has few algorithms, random forest, logarithmic regression, ADA boost. And finally, there is sort of a finalizer step that does some post-processing. In order to define this entire thing, I can just build a graph and point it and just daisy chain the different steps, introduce a voting ensemble. Here in a for loop, I'm just going to build 3 child models for the ensemble and define all those things. There's also something called a catcher that we can apply an on error step, that if there is an error in this step, we want it to go to this step that will catch the error. So we can just go and run it. You see, we get this graph. We can understand what's going on, change it, and play with it. Then we want to test this function locally. So we'll generate some dummy iris data, and then we'll just create a simulator. We call it mock server. We'll create a simulator for the entire real-time pipeline, and we'll just test it locally in our SageMaker. So you can see we're testing it. We see they generate results. We had some prints there in the classes. We got the results. Okay, now we just want to deploy this into production. The only thing we need to do in order to deploy this real-time pipeline is just say deploy. And this is essentially taking our code, compiling it, building containers, building Kubernetes resources, inputs, APIs, all of that, storage, all that is being built just as you've seen in a couple of seconds. And now that it's ready, and you see it actually got a real TCP/IP, real HTTP endpoint. Now let's just invoke it, and you see we gotten the result. That's it. So we built an entire real-time pipeline in something like a few minutes, and we can train things in SageMaker and then deploy them into production in the Iguazio cluster that's behind and running the models. You'll have model monitoring and performance monitoring and auto scaling and rolling upgrades and all those things that you need for production. But you've done it without a lot of DevOps, without a lot of engineering, just clicking few commands from your SageMaker notebook. Visit our website to learn more about Iguazio, MLrun, and the tight integration with Amazon.